reason is a combination, number one, of the Hamas insistence on attaching unrealistic conditions to a ceasefire instead of simply accepting a plain ceasefire, which is what they did a year and a half ago. There's the new factor of Egypt's worse relationship with Hamas, and actually I should also say better relationship with Israel than before. But a key additional aspect of that is it's not just Egypt, it's also Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates and a number of other Arab governments that have turned against the Muslim Brotherhood and therefore also turned against Hamas, which is an offshoot of the international Muslim Brotherhood movement. And other governments in the region, like Qatar and Turkey, and perhaps also, to some extent at least, Iran, are trying to, you might say, fill that vacuum, to be the ones who support Hamas in the face of this new opposition from major Arab governments. So this is a different situation. It's something that actually has nothing to do with Israel, and it has to do with internal politics in those countries and with the international politics of Islamic movements in the region and even beyond the region. But it turns out that this time, I would say, unhappily, the Israelis and the Palestinians are kind of are being dragged into a much broader Islamic and pan-Arab and regional competition. Yes, I think there are some important differences in, first of all, in the nature of the military conflict. Hamas this time is more capable of threatening more parts of Israel for a longer time, and with rockets and missiles, and that, and also, I should add, with tunnels, which is not a new, but a more important piece of the military picture this time around. And that means that the battle is more difficult for Israel, and at the same time, I think Israel's defensive capabilities to protect itself and its civilians against Hamas missiles and rockets have also improved greatly. Iron Dome and other systems that the Israelis are using. So each side is, I think, this time trying to, with some success actually on both sides, trying to show that it has greater military offensive and defensive capabilities. That's a difference. So far, I would say, it seems to me that Hamas is actually losing. And the reason for that is that despite its improved military capabilities, as I said, it really has not been able to bring life in Israel to some kind of crisis situation, the way life in Gaza has become a non-stop crisis situation. And this is not about, I don't think, the number of casualties, and especially, of course, of civilian casualties, which is a tragedy. But it's about whether or not either side can impose political conditions using force on the other. And so far, it seems to me that Hamas is going to come out of this with a lot of damage and no political benefits. I wish that it were realistic, but I'm afraid, from what I know, it doesn't sound very realistic to me. And if the model, and I've heard various officials talk about this, if the model is a UN Security Council resolution like the one number 1701 from 2006 that ended the Israeli war with Hezbollah in Lebanon. If that's the model, then it's a terrible model, because that resolution didn't work at all. And it said that Hezbollah was supposed to be disarmed, or that at least the Lebanese army was supposed to take over Hezbollah's weapons, and that outside parties were supposed to stop rearming Hezbollah. And of course, exactly the opposite is what really happened. And even though there was a UN Security Council resolution and even UN peacekeeping or observer forces sent in greater numbers to the Israeli-Lebanese border and to South Lebanon and to the Syrian Lebanese border, none of that had any useful practical effect whatsoever. It's more of a joke than anything else. So if that's the model for demilitarizing Hamas, I think it's not only is it not going to work, but it's probably going to make things worse instead of better. On the other hand, the model is not to demilitarize Gaza, but to prevent the borders of Gaza, whether on the Israeli side or the Egyptian side or the Mediterranean side, from being passageways for more missiles and rockets and other kinds of militarily useful equipment, like millions of tons of cement to build tunnels for military purposes instead of shelters or houses for civilians. If that is the model, then I would say I can imagine a better situation in which Hamas is not completely demilitarized, but prevented from easily or quickly becoming a significant military or terrorist threat. And that would be, I think, a good outcome, because it would make it much less likely that this kind of fighting and all of the terrible casualties associated with it would happen again in a short time. According to the polls, I would say this: the people in Gaza want a ceasefire. And in fact, they wanted a ceasefire even before the large-scale fighting began. The people on the Palestinian side, the people in the West Bank who are physically distant from the actual fighting, actually are less, they also want a ceasefire, but less urgently, and it's only natural, I guess, than the people who are under fire in Gaza. And I would say that Hamas popularity, according to the polls that we have from credible Palestinian pollsters, Hamas popularity has increased in the West Bank, but there's no evidence that I'm aware of that that is the case in Gaza, where Hamas was very, very unpopular before the fighting started. The Israeli public has shifted over the last few weeks in a somewhat more hawkish direction. At first, there was more opposition than support, for example, for a ground operation in Gaza. And now, the latest poll suggests that the Israeli public actually wants a bigger ground operation in Gaza to get rid of, if they can, the rockets and the tunnels. So I think the Israeli public, while concerned about the rockets and concerned about the casualties that its side is taking, is actually quite supportive of the Israeli government and its conduct of the war so far.